Jessica in Michigan, you're on the Ben Shapiro Show. Go for it, Jessica.
Hi, Ben. Thank you for taking my call today. I own a real estate company here in Clarkston, Michigan. As you've probably heard, there were some protests yesterday at the Capitol. I was one of them. I only held out to be on the lawn. I didn't go into the building. I was really calling because I own a real estate company, and in 48 states, not including Michigan, realtors are essential. In Michigan, appraisers are essential, inspectors are essential, title companies are essential, and mortgage companies are essential. So everyone except for realtors is essential. So I have clients who literally can't buy a house right now, and they're homeless, living with friends, because we can't take them to go look at houses. And so I was really curious if you think that if I defied the order and got a ticket for that, or got arrested, or got a misdemeanor, which is the threat, do you think that that would uphold in court that it's now been 8 weeks that I've been trapped in my home? The government has given me literally nothing because they said that I made too much money last year to be eligible. I can't continue to decide between paying my mortgage or paying my groceries. What would happen if I got arrested?
Yeah, so let's talk about that, and then I have questions about how that protest went, because you only see the media coverage,
Sure.
so I'd be curious to hear how it went out on the lawn. So first of all,
Yes.
if you got a ticket for defying the order, the high likelihood is that it would hold up in lower court, and then you'd have to elevate it all the way up to the federal courts and say that your federal civil rights have been violated, that there is no good rational basis reason why realtors should not be allowed to work. Yeah, I think that if you elevated it to the federal level, there's a good shot that you'd be able to beat the misdemeanor ticket. The problem is it would cost you so much money to go to a lawyer to beat the misdemeanor ticket. That's basically what Whitmer is betting on. What she's betting on is you don't have the resources or the will to drag that out for a process that'll be a year long to avoid a $1,000 ticket. So you'll either just pay the $1,000 ticket or you won't, and that'll be that. And she's probably right. I mean, for most people, that is indeed the case. The fact is that there can be no rational basis for everybody except for realtors gets to work right now. I mean, it's just, this is insane. I mean, it is totally insane. These governors are picking essential businesses, and they're doing it almost out of a hat. They're almost just declaring certain businesses essential and certain businesses non-essential, not on the basis of anything rational, but based simply on going down a check-boxed list and then randomly selecting from the Chinese menu. It's totally wild. So I think that you have a very solid case. I mean, you should talk to a federal civil rights lawyer if that's something you're interested in doing. But honestly, I don't see how that holds up in federal court, like on a raw level. Now, don't take my legal advice as the purest form of good advice here. You should talk to somebody who's more expert than I. But it seems like even rational basis review would not be able to uphold the distinction between a realtor and an appraiser in essential business. Again, I think that Whitmer is going to have to start releasing people from this lockdown sooner rather than later. I would be surprised if she continues the lockdown for another month in the way that she has so far, although she is running for vice president and she's gotten all sorts of media attention for doing it. So you never know. The political considerations are really bad. So Jessica, tell me about the protest yesterday, because all we saw from the media, obviously, were the people who actually went inside the Capitol. My understanding is they were temperature checked. I don't have a problem with people showing up with guns per the law. But it seems to me bad optics to get up in the face of cops and scream at cops and get in people's faces without masks. It seems to be sort of the opposite of what people are promoting, which is I can run my business responsibly without providing a danger to others to do all of that. What was it like outside the Capitol?
As you well know, Ben, the pictures that you're seeing on the internet are not really describing what actually happened yesterday. One thing that I was really impressed by was how the media intentionally didn't say that Sheriff Clark was there speaking to the crowd, which I had no idea was going to happen. I had no idea if the protest was still going on because Facebook removed all ads in relation to it. So I honestly went, as a Republican, as a conservative, and as a business owner, I'm impressed with how much Republicans have time to protest after you take away their jobs. So I know that other people seem to have a lot of time to protest, but since I can't work, I have nothing to do but to protest this measure. So I was there. I was standing on the lawn. The police were walking completely through the crowd. The Michigan State Police was walking there. Everyone was standing on the lawn, probably maybe not 6 feet apart, but every, household was standing in a clump. and the police were walking through the crowd safely. It's not honest that people were screaming in the faces of cops. If you take a picture from the side, which is where that picture of what looks like men screaming in the faces of cops, you can't tell how far apart. He's clearly standing in between them. And so I had a conversation with a police officer while I was there, and I said, not one person in this whole crowd has socks that are pigs wearing cop hats on it. These are the people who are defending the police. So while you're deciding who to give a ticket, which as far as I know, no one got a ticket yesterday, just know that these aren't the people who are kneeling for the flag. I am a cop's wife. I love the police, but my husband didn't take an oath to protect Gretchen Whitmer. He took an oath to protect the Constitution, and that is his job. And I am very sure that the police that were there yesterday, if anyone ever asked them, they would say that the crowd was completely under control, that no one was disrespectful to the police. And that has nothing to do with what the media is saying happened. I haven't found one article about the fact that the sheriff, I think from Minnesota, Sheriff Clark, was there giving a speech telling people to stop, to stand up for their rights.
Well, Jessica, really appreciate the call. And as I say, I think a lot of protesters who are actually being responsible about how they're protesting are getting lumped in with the people that the media can make out to be the nuts. They're basically involved in what we call in the media nut picking, which is they're finding the people who are the most inflammatory. They're making that out to be the majority of these crowds. That is not what I'm perceiving from a lot of people from whom I'm receiving emails. So, Jessica, really appreciate the call and the information. Justin in Pennsylvania, you're on the Ben Shapiro Show. Go for it, Justin.
I know not to belittle anything that's going on in other states, especially Jessica in Michigan there. Sounds like a lot worse than in PA, but I haven't heard a lot about college students during this whole ordeal, which is interesting to me because most of us were excluded from the stimulus. We're either just out of the age range where our parents even get the $500. We didn't get any money. And we're out of jobs, of course, like 30 million other people. But I'm just curious what you think the situation should be there, because again, most of us have really gotten shortchanged and we got nothing to do, nowhere to go. And I go to a trade school. How am I supposed to do virtual stuff when all my work is hands-on?
So, I'll be honest with you. I don't know if college students are even eligible for a stimulus check. I believe that college students under the CARES Act are ineligible between 17 and 23 if they're claimed as a dependent on somebody else's federal income taxes. Most college students are still classified as dependents for purposes of federal aid or to continue having medical coverage. That's the big problem. So I'm not sure about your particular story. Are you still claimed as a dependent by members of your family?
I believe I was, yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, that would be the issue there. So if you're not claimed as a dependent, then you're eligible for aid. If you're claimed as a dependent, then the government is going to assume you're an actual dependent, meaning that your parents are paying your bills. It's one of the traps that is sort of set in the law, is that you sometimes are claimed as a dependent by your parents, and they're not actually supporting you. They just want to keep you going on their health insurance so you don't have to pay for your own health insurance. It's one of the problems with Obamacare, which really should not have allowed people to remain dependent on their parents' health care beyond the age of 18. Right? Once you're an adult, you should be paying for your own health insurance. So people took advantage of that and set up this perverse incentive where you claimed your kid as a dependent for purposes of health insurance, but they're not actually a dependent. And now they can't get a check from the government, even though they're independent. So that I think is what's happening, Justin.
They didn't even get the $500 for me, and I of course didn't get $1,200. So I'm basically, I don't exist, even though I've been paying.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, you're stuck. You're stuck in the nether regions of the federal government, which is always an uncomfortable place to be. Justin, I appreciate the call. Will in Colorado, you're on the Ben Shapiro Show. Go for it, Will.
And thank you for taking my call. So my question for you was, when you're debating with liberals or even friends, how do you handle their arguments coming from emotion, your arguments coming from fact, and not go crazy, basically?
Yeah, Will, I wish I were perfect at it. I mean, I feel like I'm fairly good at it, but there are times when I break. And when I break, it's never good, right? It's always a bad look. The key is to remember that is the actual game here, is to get people to essentially lose it. And if you lose it, then they can always make you look flustered and make you look bad. And there's this famous BBC interview that has gone around, went from last year, where somebody just keeps needling me about old tweets. And eventually I'm like, you know what? This is ridiculous. And I just walk off the set. And this thing went highly viral. It was crazy. I love debating, but why would I walk off the set? I let him go at me for like 20 minutes. And then I was like, this is a complete waste of time. And I walked off the set. It was a bad look for me. I shouldn't have done it. I should have I agreed to the interview. It was dumb. I should have vetted it first, but I didn't. And so that was a mistake. You know, that sort of stuff does happen. The key is to keep your cool, understanding that literally the entire tactic is to make you lose your cool. That's because the facts do not line up with a lot of left-wing positions. And so the goal is to make you look as though you're angry. And then they can say, oh, look, you're mad. Now you're getting mad. It's all teenage bullcrap, but it is successful in the world of media. So, it really is a challenge, and you just have to understand what people are up to, Will. I really appreciate the call. Jim in Austin, Texas, you're on the Ben Shapiro Show. Go for it, Jim.
When we debate those that are on the left, they often end up vilifying their own position, albeit in great ignorance, while we on conservatives can look back on men like Reagan and Milton Friedman and still appreciate them. Why does it often seem that the left is committed to a direction rather than a policy or a position?
I mean, I think that the reason is because for the left, the constant goal is revision of the system. This is why they call themselves progressives, because whatever the system is, the system must be torn down. It doesn't matter that we have the biggest government in human history right now in the United States. It doesn't matter that we have been consistently moving in a leftward social direction in the United States. The goal is, here's the thing. Leftism is based on a philosophy, which is that human beings are innately malleable. Right? There's no such thing as human nature. Human beings are innately malleable. To the extent that people on the left claim that men can be women and women can be men, right? That's how malleable we are. We are completely malleable. And that means that all human shortcomings are not a result of human nature. All human shortcomings, all inequalities, all failures are the result of the system. Well, if the system is always to be blamed for faults of human nature, and those faults never go away, that means the system has to be constantly revised and constantly changed. And so for the left, because they will never reach their utopian system, because human nature does in fact exist, the goal is to constantly tear down the system that exists in favor of a new, better system controlled by people like them. Because if they control human beings from the top, then they can finally change human nature along the lines of which it should originally have been changed. This is when I've used the phrase on the show, Marxist materialism, this is the idea that economic circumstance dictates how you're going to act. And this is the innate promise of Marxism. The innate promise of Marxism is not that you're going to be more prosperous. It's not that it's going to be incredibly fair. It's that simply by rejiggering the nature of the economy, you have changed the social circumstances surrounding human beings, and human beings will have their heart of stone replaced with a heart of flesh, and suddenly human beings will be better and human beings will be different. Well, that means that when you look around society and you see anything happening that is bad, that is the result of the system. It is not the result of individual responsibility, because individuals were shaped by their environment. So it's the fault of the environment. So all you have to do is constantly be shouting at the system. And so that's why it's about the direction. The direction is always tearing down the system. It's why leftist revolutions innately eat their own, because the person who is promoting one form 1 second ago is now the person who's in power. And the person in power is responsible for the system. And the system will always be bad because there will always be flaws in human nature. And so that person has to be torn down now. It's why Robespierre will lead the French Revolution and then find himself guillotined a couple of years later. It's why Lenin will lead the revolution and then Stalin will basically push him down the stairs. Right? This is the way that all of this works in leftism. It's why you're seeing all the same people who are promoting Martin Luther King's actual policies in 1968 with regard to race. Now those people are declared racist by the newfangled intersectionality advocates. It's why you see people who are very much in favor of a feminist stand in favor of women being castigated as TERFs by people who suggest that women can become men. The revolution always has to eat its own because the revolution is ongoing and never ends. That is why it's all about a direction and not about a specific policy. The moment you wed leftism to a specific policy, then that policy will become responsible for the innate human sin that leftists refuse to recognize exists.
So basically, it's them running into the brick wall of a utopia as possible. And so rather than hit the brick wall at this area, they just go to the other side of the brick wall and keep hitting their head against that side.
That's exactly right. Instead of them actually just recognizing that the entire basis for their philosophy is wrong, human nature exists, it is not malleable, and human beings are going to sin, which would be the complete destruction of their entire belief system, which is that human beings can be completely changed by the system around them. Instead of just acknowledging that they're wrong about that, they will just keep tearing down the system. The system it's always the system default, which means the system always can be torn down. Jim, really appreciate the call. I hope you enjoyed that clip from The Ben Shapiro Show. If you did, go ahead and hit the subscribe button so you stay up to date on all of our future content.